Thank you. Hello, can y'all hear me? All right. So basically, right now, I'm working with a couple of guys. We are basically, just a little introduction to myself. We are basically working on a boot camp to teach people how to just learn full stack web development faster. We will be launching in January, so if anyone is interested, let us know. And also, we are looking for content contributors. So if any one of you, you guys are interested, let us know as well. You can get more information from bootcampsg.kickoffpages.com. We don't know what to call it yet, so. Okay, today we're gonna talk about. I'm gonna talk about building a real-time chat app using HTML5 WebSockets. Have any one of y'all used it before or no? So I'm actually a Ruby developer, but I will be presenting using Node.js when we actually start coding. Okay. Before we get started, I just want to talk about how the web works for those who are not very familiar. So basically, the web works by there's a client browser. So let's say you type in google.com in your browser. What happens is that your browser would send a HTTP request to Google server. Google server would basically process the request and return a HTTP response, which includes a header and a body, and so on and so forth. So just based on this knowledge, how would we naively build a chat app, right? We can build it in such a way that, so you're in the chat application, the user sends a message, so that's a HTTP request. The server will receive the message and probably store it in the database, and then it would return a success message to the client browser. And then other clients, so this chat app is not just for one person, right? There's a lot of other users as well. So other users would maybe poll the server every single second to get new messages. And then the server would send the other clients this new message. So to make it more visual, this is how it looks like. So there's a client browser. So let's say K is a user and she's chatting. She sends a message to the server, how's it going? The server receives the message, and basically the server would say, I received your message. And there will be other client browsers that's trying to, so other client browsers will basically ping the server again and say, are there any new messages? So if you have 5 client browsers, every single second, these 5 client browsers would be pinging the server, are there any new messages? Are there any new messages? And then the server would say, yes, there's a message from K, how's it going? And this goes on and on and on. So what's the problem here, right? The problem is that every client would constantly be asking the server over and over again. So there's a lot of requests there. So the main question is, when should client browsers request for new messages? And because the client has no idea when there is a new message that is being received. So in the previous example, we solve it by, as I've mentioned just now. So just imagine, right, like your chat application, let's say there are 100 users, and every user is pinging the server every single second. That's a lot of requests. In 1 minute, you would have 6,000 requests hitting your server. And then there's another problem, HTTP. This is how a HTTP request header looks like. There's a lot of other information about the browser and stuff like that. And then from the server, there's a HTTP response header that is also a lot of other information. So what is the main problem about this headers? Well, I did some calculation, and it's about 871 bytes of, somewhat unnecessary information for a chat application. 871 bytes doesn't seem like much, but if you do some math, just imagine you have 1,000 clients polling every single second. We are talking about 6.6 megabit per second for your network throughput. And what if you have 10,000 or 100,000 clients? We're talking about a whole lot of data. And this actually doesn't even include the chat body yet, the message. So that's really unnecessary for a chat app. So there was a technique called polling. It sounds kind of stupid, but in the not so distant past, this is actually a very common technique. And there are other alternatives like long polling, HTTP streaming, and so on, but we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about WebSockets. So what is WebSockets? WebSocket is a HTML5 specification. It's actually a communication protocol. And it basically allows the browser and the server to have bi-directional communication over a single channel. So it's a lot more efficient, and there will be no HTTP headers involved. And it allows the server to basically broadcast messages without the client initiating for something. And what's good about WebSocket is that there are libraries out there that allow you to hook up your native mobile apps. If let's say you want a native chat client on your phone, Android, iOS, and stuff like that. So a very smart guy who is part of the WebSocket effort, he basically said this, right? Reducing kilobytes of data to 2 bytes and latency from 150 millisecond to 50 millisecond. It's very significant, and just these two factors alone makes WebSocket very interesting. So what would we use WebSockets for? Real-time apps, so chat apps, stock tickers, news report, traffic patterns, even real-time games, and so on and so forth. All right, so let's get building. For this presentation, I'm going to use Node.js. And why Node.js? At first, I wanted to present this using Sinatra, Ruby, and with the Sinatra framework. But I decided that Node.js is probably a better fit for this because Node.js allows you to write non-blocking code, which is awesome. In terms of a very, let's say, a chat app would be, you would want a lot of users, essentially. And I'm going to be using the Express framework. It's not necessary, but it's easier. And then Socket.io. So Socket.io is actually a WebSocket library. I won't go into the details of how to establish a WebSocket connection, like the handshake and stuff like that, how it actually works. Socket.io takes care of a lot of that for you, and also cross-browser compatibility. So it would actually downgrade to different connections if WebSocket is not available for a particular browser. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, I'm gonna call this chat. Chatting with geeks. It's kind of hard actually. Okay. Okay, so for those of you who are familiar with Node.js, there is something called NPM, which is Node Package Manager. It allows you to manage your dependencies. It's kind of like Ruby gems for Ruby. So how you would do that is you basically create a file called package.json. All right. and this is how it looks like. Okay. So let's call this chat for gigs. You can specify a version number and a description, and then you basically tell npm what are the dependencies for your application here, and you can also specify the version. So after you're done with this, you would just run npm install. All right. So this would install all your different dependencies. And while we are waiting, we are gonna create your server-side logic. All right, so I will just put it in the root directory. All right, so the first thing to do is to require the different modules that you actually need in your code. So in this case, we will need a module called HTTP. This comes default with Node. And we will require Express. Okay, so after that, we want to initialize our app, and how we do that is by doing this. And then we want to initialize a server as well. Server app, and listen on port 8080. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna serve up a very simple web page right now. So basically, how you would write that this is only, if you're using Express, this is how it looks like. App-get root. Then you specify request response. And let's say we want to serve up index.html, right? So it would be send file, and Express gives you this convenience variable directory name, which is your root directory, and index.html. So let's create index.html here. H1. Hello, sexy. All right. So let's start up our server. Localhost 8080, that's where our server is listening. All right, so that's Node.js and Express. So what's next? Now we want to use Socket.io to build our chat app. So what we have to do is, I've already specified in the package as Socket.io as a dependency. So now what we have to do is to require Socket.io as the Socket.io module. So require Socket.io. And then we want to initialize Socket.io. Okay. I'm going to copy some styling that I've already done previously. Okay. So this is actually requiring socket.io.js from the package itself, from here.
Okay.
And the rest of the libraries are jQuery and Bootstrap that I'm using for this. So all right, let's see how that looks like. Restart the server. All right. So what happened is that right now is not loading in my styles, my style sheet and my JavaScript file. So what we'll do is we'll set up the server to serve the necessary assets. What I like to do is to write a setting to basically predefine all the different directories of where my files will be located. So in this case, views directory, style sheets directory. We'll put it in assets/css and JavaScript. And we'll put it in assets.js. Okay. And we would have to make a folder for that. So make directory for views and make directory for assets, JS and CSS. Alright, so now we have the directories: assets, CSS, JavaScript, views. We want to move index.html into view, so move index.html into views index.html. Alright. Okay, so this, we should serve this from the views directory. So settings dot view underscore directory. Yep. So let's see if this works. Okay. Now I'm just going to copy in some code. Basically, this is to serve up the different asset files. In production, you wouldn't really do this. Maybe you would use a CDN or something to distribute your static assets. So what this does is that basically it's a wildcard. Anything that ends with CSS, we would basically send the file, the CSS file, this way, as well as the JavaScript file. So unfortunately, you have to restart your server, and it should load in my styles or not. So it's not finding it. Oh, right. So I actually forgot to include the files. So it's actually a blank folder. Just copy it. copy in the CSS files and the JavaScript files. Okay. It should work. Yes. That doesn't look a lot better, but it's functional. Okay, so right now we want to initialize Socket.io to make it connect. So you have to write both server-side logic as well as client-side to connect the both sides to use WebSockets. So we'll start with server-side. We're just gonna put everything in this file. It's probably not the best practice, but it's easy to see. So IO comes from here. So we initialize WebSocket to listen on this server. What we want to do is make it work. So on connection. Okay. So how Socket.io works is that you can basically specify events of your own. So in this case, a joint event is actually given by Socket.io. So whenever a client initiates a WebSocket connection with your server, and when it actually connects, it would send the client would send a joint event to the server. And when the server receives it, we will do something, we will basically do something, whatever we want to do, right? So when a client joins, what we want to do is, actually maybe to start off, let's keep things very simple. Let's just implement a very simple chat app. So basically the client would send a message and that would call the message event and the server would receive it, and all the server does is basically broadcast this message to all the other clients. And how you do that would be client.broadcast .init the message event. Okay, so don't get confused. This event is invoked whenever the server receives a message event from the client, and the server would send a message event after that to all the different client browsers that is connected. And we have to specify the data that's being sent. So I'll just use a JavaScript object for that. Okay, perfect. So we will have to set, we have to initialize the WebSocket connection on the client side as well. So how we do that is, we have already required Socket.io here. Script. Okay. So we'll just put everything in document ready. Okay. So how do we initialize a socket connection? Do IO connect. Okay. What you have to put here is your server's address. So it could be an IP address or a domain. I have to check what my IP address is right now. Okay. And I'm running on port 8080. Okay, so basically what happens here is that when you actually go to your browser and type in the address of this web page, it would load up this page, and then it would initialize, it will actually connect, try to initialize a WebSocket connection with your server. And you have to specify the address. So now what happens is all right, let's see what it looks like now. Okay, so right now this whole thing doesn't work, right?
Sorry, your function has a typo.
Oh, really?
Document not ready. Function.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Yeah. So back to this. This form right now doesn't work. What we want to do is to catch that event. So whenever someone sends the form, we want to catch that event and actually send the message through WebSocket. So we basically want to prevent default. And this is just jQuery. So the form is chat form. Yeah. Oh, it's not sharing. Hang on, guys. Okay. Yeah. Using this screen. Okay, good. Okay. Sorry for that. So the chat form on submit. Okay, so we want to prevent the form from doing its default, which is actually submitting to the server. We want to prevent default, and we actually want to use WebSockets using Socket.io to actually send the message to the server. So how we would do that is basically we want to grab the message out first. Where's my mouse? So this is actually the text area of my form. I gave it a chat ID of chat input to make things easy. So I'm gonna call it chat input. Okay, and so now what we want to do is basically send the message to the server. Let's call it a message event, and we're gonna send. Oh, I actually haven't grabbed the message out. So chat input dot file. Alright, so that is actually the message body itself. This is a jQuery method. Okay, so you can see what happens here, right? Like when we try to submit the form now, it would basically grab the message from the text area and actually send a message event to the server. The server receives the message here, and then it would broadcast this message to other clients connected. So let's test that out first. Oh, wait a minute. So I haven't actually configured the client side to receive messages. Right now the client is only configured to send messages, message events. Oh no, my time is up. Okay, focus. So, socket. When we receive a message event, what do we want to do? Let's keep it really simple for now. Okay, so this is basically a callback function, right? Whenever we receive a message event, the data that is being passed from the server, or let's just make it an alert. So data dot message. Yay, so it actually works. Okay,
Take some
Q&A?
questions.
Yeah.
Right, just in time, I would say. He actually built the entire thing in less than 30 minutes.
Not quite. No,
Not quite, not quite.
Yeah.
But really, more importantly, what are your questions?
Yeah. So actually, before we get to questions, that code that we see there, there's actually some caveats that everyone should be aware of, and that is basically security, right? Like this form is not production safe because it doesn't protect for cross-site scripting. It allows me to input JavaScript code, and then if you're running my chat app, I can just like do some funny stuff to your browser. So you would have to prevent that. And yeah, so I have actually completed a chat app, and you can actually find it on my repo if you want to. The link is there. So
Awesome. Let's have some
Q&A.
questions. Yes.
What's the advantage of using WebSocket instead of using SMTP server for real for chatting?
So traditionally, some people would use some other protocols. The thing about WebSocket is that now it's a new specification. So for you to actually build up your own server, to your own connection to actually run a chat app, it's very involved. Like there's a lot more things to do. Whereas WebSocket is awesome because it's a specification, and the world is moving towards there. So I would just say it's a new technology, and it makes things a lot easier as a developer. That's the main advantage.
Instead of using SMTP?
Yeah, basically, SMTP as in, I think I forgot what it was called, but basically people set up their own TCP connection to build their own chat apps. So like Facebook, WhatsApp, they probably do that because they started, just when WebSockets was getting finalized and stuff like that. I've looked through some of their code briefly, and it's crazy. It's crazy. It's like, now that we have WebSockets, it's like it just makes things so much easier.
Cool. Maybe somebody, yes, you in front.
Yeah.
Okay,
go on.
maybe up.
Say Socket IO has fallbacks.
Yeah.
Okay, so how practical are fallbacks?
That's a very good question. So the question would be, how do you want to be able to support a lot of users, right? If you do want to support a lot of users, I think Socket IO is definitely, being able to fallback is definitely very beneficial. So it really depends on the use case, but I would say most likely it's a good idea. Yeah.
Right, so front.
Does Socket.io communicate with backends other than JavaScript, like say Java?
So Socket.io is actually it's basically for your Node.js. It's a library for your front end and back end. Okay, so like for example, Ruby, I think it uses em-WebSocket. That's one gem that is very popular.
What about Java?
I don't know the library for Java. I'm sorry. Yeah.
How's the browser?
How's the browser compatibility? Internet Explorer, no hope. I'm not sure about the latest one. I don't even bother checking anymore. But basically, if you use Socket.io, it actually allows the browser compatibility is actually very, very high. A lot of browsers are being supported, but basically all like Chrome, Safari, Firefox, they all support it right now, the latest versions.
This skipping the web server layer like PHP and JSP, so you don't need to do that anymore.
Oh, you still need your server-side code to be able to accept WebSockets. So deploying your server is actually slightly trickier, but it's not too bad. You still need your server-side code.
Right. Maybe a last question for Josh. Right. If not, Josh is hanging around here.
Yep,
guess.
I would be.
Yes. So thanks for
Any questions, you can ping me on Twitter or my email.
Right.
Cool.
Big round of applause for Josh.